This is CNN Breaking News.
President Obama getting ready to go into the state dining room over at the White House. You're looking at these live pictures. He'll be addressing the nation, indeed the world right now, on the dramatic situation unfolding in Egypt as well as elsewhere in the Middle East. We'll hear from the president. You'll hear his remarks. We'll go there as soon as he walks into the state dining room. We're following all the breaking news out of Egypt right now, where it's about 1:30 a.m. Saturday morning in Egypt right now. Within the last hour, President Hosni Mubarak went on national television in Egypt, breaking his own silence about the days of violent protest aimed at ending his 2 decades of rule. But President Mubarak is standing firm. He says his government will resign, but he gave absolutely no indication he's stepping down. And that has triggered yet more outrage on the streets of Cairo and Alexandria. Angry new protests are raging throughout major Egyptian cities. Let's go to Egypt's second largest city of Alexandria. Our senior international correspondent, Nick Robertson, is there. As we await the President of the United States, Nick, set the scene for us. What's happening in Alexandria?
People are still out on the streets here, Wolf. It's the young people that have led this revolution so far. They certainly have the energy to stay up all night. A young 19-year-old law student, told us after he'd heard what President Mubarak had to say was that he's just blamed the government. He hasn't taken responsibility himself. He said, we're going to keep coming out here and demonstrating until we get rid of the president and his regime. Another 20-year-old student said that this wasn't enough, that let a new government form, but we're going to continue to come out and protest. If we don't like if we don't like a new government that forms, then we will continue against them. And another young student said, look, some of the MPs who've been forced out of their jobs were good. Some of them are bad. They shouldn't just be forced out of their jobs. Some of them should be arrested. But again, the same message that they won't rest until President Mubarak and his regime are out of office. Everyone here will be waiting to hear what President Obama says, very keen to understand where the United States support lies. Is there an indication that whatever he says can add weight to their feeling that they would like to get rid of President Mubarak? But it's been on the streets here, the biggest dynamic, the biggest change we've seen take place, the fact that the police were beaten off the streets. We were on a side street here in the center of Alexandria earlier today and saw that dynamic in play at that moment where the police realized they couldn't hold the crowds back and had to give up the fight.
Nick, stand by, because I want you to listen closely, and I want all of our viewers, in fact, to listen closely to the President of the United States. Within a few seconds, he's going to be walking to that podium right over there in the state dining room, and he's going to be speaking directly to all of us about what's going on in Egypt and throughout the Middle East right now. For the United States, the stakes are serious, very, very serious. Couldn't be more serious as far as Egypt and its strategic partnership with the United States is concerned. We'll see how far the president goes in expressing support or not for Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, who spoke just a little while ago, making it clear he's staying in power, at least will attempt to stay in power. The Egyptian leader giving absolutely no indication whatsoever that he's getting ready to step down, although there have been reports that his wife has already left Egypt, is in London perhaps, and that his son Gamal, who had been widely seen as the heir apparent to President Mubarak, that Gamal Mubarak is also out of the country right now. We have not been able to absolutely confirm those reports, but they certainly have been evident. Here comes the president, so let's listen.
Good evening, everybody. My administration's been closely monitoring the situation in Egypt, and I know that we will be learning more tomorrow when day breaks. As the situation continues to unfold, our first concern is preventing injury or loss of life. So I want to be very clear in calling upon the Egyptian authorities to refrain from any violence against peaceful protesters. The people of Egypt have rights that are universal. That includes the right to peaceful assembly and association, the right to free speech, and the ability to determine their own destiny. These are human rights, and the United States will stand up for them everywhere. I also call upon the Egyptian government to reverse the actions that they've taken to interfere with access to the internet, to cell phone service, and to social networks that do so much to connect people in the 21st century. At the same time, those protesting in the streets have a responsibility to express themselves peacefully. Violence and destruction will not lead to the reforms that they seek. Now, going forward, this moment of volatility has to be turned into a moment of promise. The United States has a close partnership with Egypt, and we've cooperated on many issues, including working together to advance a more peaceful region. But we've also been clear that there must be reform, political, social, and economic reforms that meet the aspirations of the Egyptian people. In the absence of these reforms, grievances have built up over time. When President Mubarak addressed the Egyptian people tonight, he pledged a better democracy and greater economic opportunity. I just spoke to him after his speech, and I told him he has a responsibility to give meaning to those words, to take concrete steps and actions that deliver on that promise. Violence will not address the grievances of the Egyptian people, and suppressing ideas never succeeds in making them go away. What's needed right now are concrete steps that advance the rights of the Egyptian people, a meaningful dialogue between the government and its citizens, and a path of political change that leads to a future of greater freedom and greater opportunity and justice for the Egyptian people. Now, ultimately, the future of Egypt will be determined by the Egyptian people. And I believe that the Egyptian people want the same things that we all want: a better life for ourselves and our children, and a government that is fair and just and responsive. And put simply, the Egyptian people want a future that befits the heirs to a great and ancient civilization. The United States always will be a partner in pursuit of that future, and we are committed to working with the Egyptian government and the Egyptian people, all quarters, to achieve it. Around the world, governments have an obligation to respond to their citizens. That's true here in the United States. That's true in Asia. It is true in Europe. It is true in Africa. And it's certainly true in the Arab world, where a new generation of citizens has the right to be heard. When I was in Cairo, shortly after I was elected president, I said that all governments must maintain power through consent, not coercion. That is the single standard by which the people of Egypt will achieve the future they deserve. And surely there will be difficult days to come, but the United States will continue to stand up for the rights of the Egyptian people and work with their government in pursuit of a future that is more just, more free, and more hopeful. Thank you very much.
All right, you heard a pool reporter trying to shout a question to the president, but he walked out right away. President Obama, a brief statement, but a very important statement, urging calm right now, urging restraint on everyone, the protesters and the Egyptian military and police, saying that everyone must refrain from violence right now. Egyptian authorities, he was specifically addressing them right at the top, also urging Egyptian authorities to open up the internet, the social networking sites, saying that there can be peaceful protests, urging the protesters to avoid violence. This is a moment of promise, he says, that could emerge out of a moment of volatility. Fred Pleitgen is our man in Cairo right now. Fred, I assume you were listening to the President of the United States. You heard about an hour or so ago the Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak speak out. We just lost your light, but you can speak. We can hear you, Fred. So go ahead. Give us your sense of how this is going to play in Egypt, what we heard from President Obama.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Our light just blew out here on the live position. Yeah, I don't think that this is going to be enough for the protesters who we've been seeing here today. What they've been saying is they would like to see the U.S. go away from Hosni Mubarak and declare that this is no longer their man. What we just heard from President Obama is that he's saying there needs to be more reform, there needs to be calm on the streets now, but that he is calling on Hosni Mubarak to implement those reforms, and that's clearly not something that many people here believe will happen. This man's been in power for 30 30 years here, a lot of people here in Egypt, especially the younger generation that the president was just talking about, have known no other president than Hosni Mubarak, and clearly they're very dissatisfied with what they're getting. People have been telling me again and again on the streets, to them, this is about social change, more freedoms, more rights. This is about having jobs. This is about having economic opportunities. This is about having opportunities in education. Things that they say have been lacking across the board. So certainly to a lot of the people that we've been speaking to, nothing short of President Mubarak stepping down would have been enough for them. Clearly that's not going to be the case. And they were expecting, they told me, a strong statement from America to the extent that America also felt that there needed to be change. And you know, one of the other things that they've been talking about is they keep telling me America seems to think that because Hosni Mubarak is their ally, this is the only person they can go with in Egypt. They say, give it a chance, let the people find a new leader here, and then hopefully move forward as a beacon of stability and democracy for the people here in this country. Wolf?
Fred, stand by for a moment, because I want to play a little excerpt of what we just heard from President Obama, making the point that he just spoke with the Egyptian leader, Hosni Mubarak, on the phone. He wanted to speak with him before he addressed the American people. And as a result, he said that when he spoke with President Mubarak, he urged him to exercise restraint and to address the grievances of the people of Egypt. Very, very carefully phrased words. Here's a little excerpt of what President Obama said.
As the situation continues to unfold, our first concern is preventing injury or loss of life. So I want to be very clear in calling upon the Egyptian authorities to refrain from any violence against peaceful protesters. The people of Egypt have rights that are universal. That includes the right to peaceful assembly and association, the right to free speech, and the ability to determine their own destiny. These are human rights, and the United States will stand up for them everywhere.
All right, the President of the United States, Nick Robertson, is on the scene for us in Alexandria, Egypt. That's the second largest city in Egypt. Same question to you, Nick. What the President of the United States just said, how do you think that's going to play? Because it's the middle of the night right now in Alexandria and Cairo, but when daylight comes out, Saturday is a regular day in Egypt. It's the first working day of the week. How's all of this going to play?
People are going to look at what President Obama has said. They're going to think about it, and they're going to reflect that he probably didn't go far enough for them. That there's no call here for national dialogue, for example. There's no demand on President Mubarak for free and fair elections. These are things that people here might have hoped for. They really would like to see and get a sense the United States is more behind the people and more prepared to take a much firmer line with President Mubarak than this appears to be at this stage. I think there's going to be a good degree of disappointment. But the real thing people are going to wake up to on Saturday morning here is a very simple fact that President Mubarak says is not going. He's just firing his government, and he's going to stay, and that's the challenge to the people and the protesters here, and that's what's going to rile them most of all. But they're going to be disappointed. They haven't heard more from the United States, and there's something you hear that circulates here at the moment, Wolf, among the people, whether it's right or not. There's a lot of people here who have heard the rumor that some of these tear gas rounds that are being fired are fired from using U.S. cartridges. And although that's not something we can substantiate, that's certainly something people believe on the streets. They really want to know where the United States stands, and they want the United States to stand behind them and their calls for democracy and all the things that President Obama listed there. But it's little things like this that's going to play on their minds, Wolf.
Nick Robertson, I want you to stand by. Fred Pleitgen in Cairo, stand by as well. We're going to take a quick break. The breaking news, though, will continue right here. It's unfolding on the streets of Egypt right now. We're not leaving this story. The stakes are clearly enormous. We'll be right back.
Somewhere in America.